Welcome to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast, where we interview the best and the brightest business and real estate leaders. Our mission is to inspire and help 1,000 entrepreneurs to start and succeed in real estate and entrepreneurship. We will give you the exact playbook to succeed in your business through the experience of those who blaze the path. We're bringing the what's working today directly to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I have a longtime social media friend, Gerald Hennessy, with me. Super excited to be able to actually get to connect with him today. He is an awesome entrepreneur. He's deep in the real estate space. He's talking in the AI space and the tech space. He's also a family man, father of 4, taking care of his family. So I really relate to Gerald, and I've been a big fan of his for a while. So I'm happy to have him on today. Gerald, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
Yeah, awesome, man. So we just like to start this out. It's casual conversation, usually ends up being really big impact for folks that are on a similar journey or trying to get to where you are or where our guests are. So talk to us a little bit about what's your background? How did you get into real estate, tech, AI, and where'd you kind of start? What's really unique, I find, is that where people start isn't always where they end. So I'm curious where you started, how you got in there, what your journey's been, and what your business looks like today.
Okay, yeah. So I've been in real estate as an investor for 17 years. And just before that, I started as a mortgage broker, and I was working with a number of investors. And so I was privy to their tax returns and all their books. And when I started seeing how much money investors were making in real estate, I decided I was in the wrong part of real estate as far as mortgage is concerned. So I made a decision right then and there that I was going to become a real estate investor. And I didn't know anything about it other than a few things here and there, but I made the decision and I burned the boats and I went all in on it. Luckily, I had made some money in mortgages, so I had some capital that I was able to utilize to get started as a real estate investor. And my first year as a real estate investor, I bought 27 properties in 4 different states. So it was kind of like from 0 to 60 really fast. Wow. And all along the way, I've had technology kind of helping me out, right? So in the beginning, I started with a notepad, then I moved on to a spreadsheet. And then from there, we added a database, and then we started adding some technology over the years. So we started adding automation, then we added voice and texting into our database. And that just kind of continued on over the years until about a year and a half ago when OpenAI or ChatGPT became available. And we found a way to connect ChatGPT with our SMS. And so we quickly had the ability to let go of our virtual assistants in the Philippines and instead lean heavily into AI to process a lot of the raw data and home sellers, motivated sellers that we come across. And so over the last 17 years, I've been very diverse in real estate. I've owned regular rentals. I've owned some vacation rentals. We've also done some boarding houses and room rentals. And then for a few years, I actually got into real estate development and took on some multi-million-dollar redevelopment projects that were, one of them in particular was this 127-year-old brick building that needed to be repurposed and renovated. And so we took 6 or 7 months to put together a world-class team as far as engineers and historical preservation specialists and all that sort of stuff, and to work on a massive project on a massive scale. And it's very interesting to do that kind of stuff versus just flipping houses. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. I have so many. Well, first off, it's really cool because a lot of times when you're hearing, you see a lot of the popular investors today, you're listening to their podcast, it's, folks they got in the game like mid 2010s. So not their fault, not bad or good, but you're on a historic run up in the market. It's really hard to do bad during that time. Certainly challenges. It wasn't easy. I know people think like yesteryear was always the best year in real estate and we've got it so hard this year. I feel like we have this conversation every year. Oh my gosh, interest rates are high, or oh my gosh, COVID happened. Nobody's going to buy or sell a house. It's always something, right? If we go back, I mean, if I'm doing my math right, 16, 17 years ago, you're talking like entry into the market 2007, 8, 9 timeframe.
Yeah, so 2006 was when I got in. And for anybody that's paying attention to history, in 2007, the following year, everything started going like this. And the following year after that, 2008, so let's put it this way. So I had 27 properties in my first year that I bought in 4 different states. And I had 1.7 million in equity built up in my first year over those 27 properties. And by the end of 2008, it was gone. And I actually owed $1 million. I was underwater $1 million on those 27 properties. That's how wild of a swing it went from one direction to the other. You know, I had houses that were worth 350 or 400 that, you know, within a matter of a couple of months, suddenly were worth under 300, you know, in the twos. And I was just going, and everybody got affected at that time. That's the thing, like you mentioned, is that so many people got into the business when it started recovering, which was 2010, 11, 12, right in there. And after that point, it was all just one big run up, and it's still just kind of, it hasn't, come back down, not commensurate to what happened in 2007, 2008 anyway.
No, certainly. We feel like today, we certainly feel like the pricing is dropping, but it's dropping from a historic high. So we're not even touching pre-COVID pricing or rates or anything. So it's a really interesting dynamic. So 2006, probably one of the worst years in the history, if not the worst, to get into real estate, by the way.
Yes.
So you bought in 4 different states. What were the states and why did you choose those states? What was your model at that time?
So my first deal, let's talk about that, I guess. So it was in Tacoma, Washington, and I had just decided that I was going to become a real estate investor. And I met somebody that knew somebody that wanted to sell. And I went and met up with this guy at the property, and the city had boarded up the house because he hadn't paid the utility bills. So the guy was living in his front yard in his car. And he was like, look, I just need money. So if you can give me some money, I'll sell you my house. But I need the money right now. And I went, all right. So I threw down a few grand as an earnest money cash deposit that he could hold and he could use it to live off of and everything. And then the following week, he called me and said, hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to do this deal with you because I made a deal with somebody else for more money.
Yeah.
And so
normal Monday.
Yeah, right. And I said, you can't do that. And he said, well, whatever, I did. So deal with it. And I went, all right, man, give me the phone number and name of the other guy and I'll work it out with him. So it turns out that I make an appointment. It's a doctor. And he tells me, come on down to the office and we'll talk about it. And so I go down there and talk to this doctor. And he asked me, how many properties have you invested in? And I was all proud and saying, well, this is my first one. And he just started laughing. He was just laughing and falling back in his chair, just laughing at me because he almost figured that he was up against somebody really sophisticated because I kind of kept a serious poker face, But so he ends up telling me, I'll tell you what, boy, I'll make you a deal of a lifetime on this. And I go, okay. And he says, I'll put up all the money. We can use my contractor, my crew. We'll get it all done and I'll give you half the profits. And I said, done, deal. Let's shake on it. All right, cool. And so I had this, almost by default, I was able to have a mentor on my first deal, right?
Wow.
So he, at no cost, right? In fact, I was getting paid to get mentored on a deal just because of the circumstances of the situation, right? So we go through the process over the next couple of months of renovating the property. Of course, when we say we, I was just watching, paying attention, and keeping good notes. And my cut ended up being like $34,000 a few months later. And so I was like, yes! And I took that $34,000 and I went crazy with it. I just started leveraging the best I can. And I used that $35,000 to buy like 7 properties. Because of back then the way you could structure it. So
were you living up in the Pacific Northwest at the time?
Yeah. But I was single at the time. So I had been divorced previously with 2 kids. And so at that time I was single. And so I just went crazy. I was hopping on a flight so from there, after that property, I went straight to Texas, in Dallas, Texas, because I had a deal that somebody brought me that was a really good deal. And so I was like, all right. And so I bought it sight unseen. And then I flew out there and started the renovations on it and everything. Right. And so the same thing happened in Vegas. I went to Vegas and bought a couple houses. Then I was taking some time off in one of my favorite places, which is Lake Havasu, Arizona. It's kind of a resort town on the lake, a lot of partying, lots of fun. And so I was out there hanging out and I met this investor, and she mentioned that she had a dozen or more properties out there that she was looking to sell all at once. And so I made a deal with her and I picked up all like a dozen properties in Lake Havasu, Arizona, all in one swoop. Right now, there's an interesting part of that, which to segue into here, which is that I don't own any properties in my name. I just don't. I did back when I first started out, but nowadays I don't own it. And there's a reason for that. And what happened was when I bought those properties in Lake Havasu, it was after hours that I made the deal with an investor. So I just had deeds already drafted up. We met with a notary, got them all signed and stamped outside of the title company, right? So then I just take the originals and I put them into my bag and I go to the airport and hop on a plane. And before I did that, I went to each of my new properties I just got and I changed the locks. And then I put a sign in the front that says this property is not for sale or rent. With any questions, call this number, which is my cell number. So I'm flying out to Dallas, Texas, and as soon as I get off the plane, I turn on my phone and it's blowing up, and I answer it, and it's the sheriff's department from Mojave County out there. And they wanted to know who the owner of the property is on one of the properties. Oh. And I said, well, it can't be good if you're calling, so why don't you tell me what's going on? And he's like, sir, I can't tell you anything until I know that you're the owner of the property. And I go, well, I'm not going to be able to help you there, but why don't you tell me what's going on and we'll see if I can help you. So he proceeds to tell me the story that there were two kids that afternoon that jumped the fence and got into the backyard. One of the kids was horseplaying and shoved the other kid into the pool. And when he fell into the pool, he hit his head on the coping on the side of the pool and was knocked unconscious. And so he took on water. Paramedics were called. They showed up. They had to resuscitate him on scene. And this is the story that the sheriff is telling me. And he said the kid's parents are here and they want to know who the responsible party is. So we're trying to find out who the owner is. Which, it's hard to put a dollar amount on a claim like that, right? I mean, you get some high-powered attorney, you could be talking millions of dollars and,
easy
in claims, right? So I very quickly just said, sorry, I can't help you. I have no idea who owns the property. I pulled the deed out and I ripped it up and I walked away from that property. And from then on, I decided I'm never going to own a property in my name ever again.
What do you know what happened to that property or the conclusion to that story?
I have no idea because it was not worth pursuing for curiosity's sake alone,
Okay, so that's a good point. Okay, so you're doing lending and you get into real estate. The market takes a dump, and I mean, obviously, you may not know this at the time, but it's the opportunity of a lifetime. You're over in the Pacific Northwest. You start to build this portfolio of properties. So you're doing buy and hold, and it sounds like you're getting these properties just kind of word of mouth, and people are bringing deals to you because you're in the lending space. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of properties come through your email and stuff like that. And then what happens next? So like, how do you evolve this business over this kind of great opportunity over the next few years?
Yeah, it became an obsession for me. So the situation that it put me in drove me to insolvency, literally. I mean, I had to go file bankruptcy because I was in deep, deep water, because like you said, I got in at the wrong time. But I had already burned the ships, burned the boats, and made the commitment and the decision that I was all in. And if you ever get in a situation like that, it is definitely no fun because it's not like you can just get up from the table and walk away and start over again. You got all these parties that want their money, and so fighting to keep a bunch of these properties was just kind of like a battle of 1,000 paper cuts. And finally, at the end of the day, I emerged from that. And then, but of course, the banks at that time, they weren't lending to anybody. You're talking like 2008, 2009, 2010, nobody was getting mortgage loans, right? Like even if you had an 850 credit score, they were really, really scrutinizing, the loan. And so most people found that they could not get traditional lending at that time. And so it forced me to evolve. And I evolved into creative financing, which of course we know is, can be taking over a mortgage or having the seller finance it, or a number of different, tricks of the trade that we use in there. But I ended up picking up properties subject to and seller financing ever since then. And in most situations where that was not sufficient, where there was more capital that was needed, I adopted a bunch of private lenders, right? And so at first I started working with those that had experience in private lending. And then I had other friends that were realizing how much money we were making, and they were asking how could they get involved too in a passive way. Right? Because a lot of people out there that have a W-2, they've got a 401k or a mutual fund, some sort of retirement account where they've got capital sitting there, and most people don't realize that you can take that capital and you can redeploy it into another investment vehicle.
Yeah. And Gerald, I find there are there's tons of money out there to be had. It's really hard for me to hear, especially when new investors like, well, I don't have the money. It's like, oh my gosh, that's the least of your worries. Like there's tons of money to be had out there. And what I find with people, especially people who have money, and these aren't all like billionaires who are sitting on capital like Scrooge McDuck. These are normal, 6 or multi-six figure earners who just save their money up or have a nice self-directed IRA. And I find there's like two types of people in that world. That's like really risk averse and they don't understand, they're concerned about real estate, or they're busy professionals. They definitely like real estate because real estate is this popularized thing that most billionaires have real estate and are rich because they have real estate, and it's very popularized to be in real estate. So a lot of people have this urge to be involved in some kind of way with real estate. They just don't know how. And for the majority of them, doing the work and finding the deals and rehabbing the deals is like, they don't really want to do that. They just want to be like partnered up and be capital providers and get a return on their money. And they like the idea of being in real estate, but they don't necessarily want to do it. So yeah, there's so many people out there like that you would be shocked. People start to see what you're doing. They start coming out of the woodworks and they want to get involved. And it's a great opportunity for them because, I would rather give my money to Gerald, who has all this experience and is in the trenches, has done it, has the systems built, already has all the scars and lessons learned, and be leveraged against a real asset that if Gerald messes up, then we'll just foreclose on him and get a deal that's a good deal and sell it in another way. So you just feel so much more protected rather than putting all my money in equities, which is good too. But I don't control Apple. I don't have any control over Tesla or what Elon Musk is tweeting. So when those stocks tank in my 401k, I'm at the whim of the market. I just have zero control over that. At least with real estate, there's a real asset involved that you can see, that you can touch, that if the person doesn't perform, you have an opportunity to take that asset, which typically is purchased at such a discount that you can just resell it. You can finish the project. You just have a lot more options and a lot more control, even as a passive investor who's doing private lending. I'm a big fan of it. I know tons of people who like doing that over the kind of the dirty work on the ground that you and I like to do. But yeah, that's cool. So you picked up these investors along the way. Now you've got capital available and a strategy of creative finance available to you. And that's massive opportunity when nobody else can get capital. And, creative finance at the time doesn't have YouTube and Pace Morby and all these other people out there teaching them how to do it. So this is like a finite resource and knowledge base that you have.
Yeah. And it was learned through necessity. You know what I mean? I had to. It was in order to survive, I had to figure some way to make the business work. And during that same period of time, lots of people left the business, which of course created the void for so many people to enter the business in 2010 and beyond, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you spend this time just collecting. So are you at this time, are you just collecting properties? Are you flipping them? Are you doing any wholesaling? What are you doing at this point?
Yeah, so at this point, we've taken a step back because, after being through so many cycles of this, the heyday of it is when interest rates are low. Because equities grow strong when interest rates are low. And when they're high, like right now, it stifles it, right? So it's not as much fun right now as it has been historically. But there's plenty of people out there still doing it. But for me, I am so compelled with artificial intelligence right now because it's not just the AI, but we've had all this tech leading up to now where we've had automations and workflows and databases, and we've had the ability for telephone, calls to happen over IP, over the internet, and to have text messages and everything all integrated. And so now what we've had for years, and we add AI to it, it's a powerful combination, right? Because we've had virtual assistants over in the Philippines, for years that we gave them great training. We gave them scripts. We gave them SOPs. We followed up. We recorded all the calls, and we quarterly would review calls and listen in and read the transcripts so we could understand what's really happening. And no matter how much training we had, and no matter how many systems we had, and no matter how good that virtual assistant was, at the end of the day, the flaw with humans is that we're human and that we make mistakes. And so when we're working with a system that doesn't make mistakes anymore and can follow up with or answer a call in real time, because there was a study that Harvard did recently where they showed that the average consumer only allocates 4 minutes for a business to engage with them and respond to them. So in other words, what that means is that as business owners, if we miss a call from a customer or potential client, then they're gone. We don't get a second chance with them because everybody's patience is so thin, right? So what that means is that if we have artificial intelligence that answers the phone when somebody calls, even if it's at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. when we're all sleeping, then the next morning we can wake up and see what happened while we were sleeping. Right. And so I love the idea of having any sort of business that makes you money while you sleep. And that was kind of the allure of rentals or even short-term, long-term rentals. The allure was having that cash flow that comes in that's being generated while you sleep. Right. And so now with the acquisition of properties and being able to automate such a great part of that process, it truly becomes scalable. Because even with the VAs and the humans in the loop, we could add more and get more data and do more volume and all this other stuff and grow. But at the end of the day, it's still so flawed that it's hard to predictably scale it.
So it sounds like you went at one point you went big on cold calling, SMS direct to seller, which was like really 2018 to 2021-ish was really working incredibly well. It started to die off as the carriers kind of came in and started layering on some limitations. But nonetheless, the winning strategy at that time would be to have an army of virtual assistants, like you said. And I mean, there were people with 15, 20, 30 virtual assistants cold calling around the clock to, pull in data, because we started to get really good access to data, and we're able to pull this data, skip trace it, get numbers, and you've got these cold callers calling. By the way, no matter what you do, there's an American resistance to somebody foreign picking up the phone on the other end, because they're so conditioned to calling some type of support, and it's like an offshore's support system to solve your problem, whether it's a credit card support or a tech support, and people can never, it's always seems to be a bad experience. So now you've got a virtual assistant from the Philippines calling you saying, "Hey, Gerald, have you considered selling your property?" And they're like, click, stop calling me, take me off your list. And then insert AI, which I'd love you to talk about this a little bit. So you've got AI today can literally take my voice and can call using my voice. You can control the speed of talking, what they say, how they respond through like chat GPT connection. So you have all this like really cool back end connecting going on there, but you still have the carrier issues. How are you doing this today? Are you doing this marketing channel today? How are you helping other people do it? How are you overcoming the carrier issues for texting and even some of the cold calling issues that folks have and limitations?
Yeah, the thing to understand about outbound marketing, as far as like the big data side of it, of buying data, skip tracing a list, cold calling, cold SMSing and all that, we're still doing it on a small scale. We're picking and choosing the data or demographic that we're going after, as opposed to just everything out there. We're really trying to stack and focus on the people that need our help, where it's obvious. Yeah. Because the fact is that everybody's thinks it's played out, right? Everybody's tired of it. Everybody's tired of getting calls asking them about their car's extended warranty and that kind of stuff, and so you've got regulators across the board that have been rolling out these new laws and policies with the carrier's support. And, it started with email, then it went to SMS, then or call for phone calls, then SMS, and now they're actually coming up with legislation supposedly that will make these violations criminal. So the window for being able to do all of this cold outbound marketing, it's closing. And most people agree that it's all about inbound now. So now we have to do things. We have to build infrastructure that can handle inbound if you've been tooled for outbound all these years, right? But what a lot of guys are doing, they'll do PPC on Google or they'll buy leads from a lead provider. And then, when that person comes in, who are they talking to? Is somebody answering the phone? Is somebody talking to them right away? Most cases not, especially if it comes in at an odd hour or the middle of the night. That everybody's dealing with it the next day, and which oftentimes is too. We know that rapport. We know that rapport is speed to lead, just like the company's name, right there with Gene. So we've got all these different things to think about now in the real estate space as far as acquisitions is concerned. If you're an investor and you just buy from other wholesalers, well, then you don't have to worry about any of this, right? But if you're generating your own motivated sellers and deals off market, then it's time to shift to a new model and come into the modern age, because so many are grabbing onto this technology and deploying it right now that if you don't, you're going to get left behind. There's just really no other way about it. I mean, when everybody else is doing something and you're not, doing it in as efficient of a way, then you're going to have more resistance. And so what we try to do nowadays is reduce the friction, reduce the resistance, so that way we have this smooth, it feels natural. And so here's another point too, right? So like we originally with AI, it was SMS that we first figured out how to connect our Twilio phone numbers to route everything to ChatGPT and then route it back through SMS, right? So, but what we found is that a lot of people, they'll text at first. Like I love texting because it's super efficient method of communication. But at the same time, even in my own head, if I start to, sometimes I'll think, well, this is too much to text, so I'm just going to call, right? We originally had this SMS ability with AI, but then before we had the voice component, people would call and they would get a voicemail. And of course, we all know nowadays in 2024 that not many people use voicemail anymore. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't even set up their mailbox, or we often find that their mailbox is full. And you'll tell people, hey, I left you a voicemail last week. And they'll go, oh, I never check my voicemail. And then on the calls that we get so many people that don't even leave a voicemail anymore for all those reasons, right?
Yeah. So that now, I think now there's a heavy focus on inbound marketing. I'm not sure I'm ready to say SMS and cold calling is completely dead, because there's ways, right? There's still people having success with it. I do believe that, every marketing channel works if you do it consistently over time and build a good system around it, for sure. I mean, I could show you plenty of KPIs and data over the years where all of them have worked for us, some better than others. And you've just seen this like growth of inbound marketing. All the people who run groups are saying like inbound is the way. So people are buying pay-per lead sources. They're doing PPC more heavily now. The people who had never touched direct mail in the past, we've been primarily a direct mail company since 2015, but people who had never touched in the past are now doing it to the tune of, 100,000 pieces of mail a month in some cases. And that's really cool because it drives people to you rather than you coming to them. However, one thing that's rarely talked about in the industry is your capacity to care for those leads. And that's to your point, what happens when they come in and how fast do you get to that lead? Particularly if you get a lead and it's just a person, a phone number, an email, and an address, and all they did was fill out a form online, you're probably not the only form they filled out. So even if it is your website, and I think I use a plumber example. If I've got stuff spewing up out of my toilet right now, and I'm not a plumber, I'm not even handy, I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type in plumber in my city, and 10 people are going to come up and I'm going to go to the first one. How do I get a hold of this person? I have a problem. I need it solved right now. If I have to fill out a form and I don't get something, I'm going to the next person. I'm calling. Whoever answers, whoever comes to me first is going to be the most likely person to get an opportunity to solve my problem right then and there. And it's the same thing for online digital lead generation, SEO, PPC, or the PPL folks who are doing a variation of that plus Google plus YouTube, plus Instagram, all this other stuff, right? But the capacity to care for those leads beyond just the speed to lead, because I can tell you from our company, from the time a lead comes in to the time we get it under contract, regardless of lead source, blended number is 59 days. And it's taken us, a dozen touches on that lead, us calling them, texting them, emailing them, or so to get to the point where we're able to sign a contract and come to an agreement. And when you go from outbound calls and now you start spending meaningful money on driving inbound leads, which are typically a little more motivated, they're going to be a little faster to a contract. Like, you have to be able to curate those leads, to nurture those leads, to be in front of them, to build relationships, there's all that stuff that happens. It's not just lead gen contract. It's like lead gen, nurture, follow up, multiple conversations, and then you're coming to an agreement. And that's happening. And at least for us, it takes about 2 months to get a contract signed. And if we're wholesaling that deal, it takes us another, 25, 30 days to close and get. So you're talking from the time I spend money, it's 90 days till I close something and bring more revenue in. And there's all this activity in between that's rarely talked about, which is a great opportunity for AI to operate within compliance. People who reached out to you and now you're in conversation with them. AI can, when I say artificial intelligence, a big term, or some type of automated follow-up smart system that can answer questions and get somebody ready to have a conversation with a real person, is becoming really, really good.
And that's the key, right? So we've had deals that were extremely lucrative equity-wise, and over the years, some of the best ones we've ever had, the juiciest, beefiest deals we've ever had, some of them took 12 to 18 months to get under contract, just because of the fact that they weren't ready yet. They weren't ready. They're not sure. They still have some things to work out in their plans of where they're going to go and such. But because we've kept up with them and followed up, follow up, all of a sudden when they're ready, we're right there. And they make a deal with us, But you're absolutely right in everything that you were saying, that in the past, for years, we've had if this, then that, which is really just a description for an automation that if somebody asks about something very specific, that keyword or phrase can trigger an automatic pre-cut response, right? That'll just say, well, and it's copy paste essentially, right? But with AI, It's generative, right? So if somebody asks a question that has never been envisioned and is not in the script for the bot, it's going to think about it and it's going to generate a response, right? And so it's so much more human-like than ever before. And that's really what makes AI so special, right? And it's what a great time to be alive, to be able to utilize this technology. I wish I had it all these 17 years of doing real estate.
Yeah. Where do you see, we're really just scratching the surface, and you're seeing a lot of people come into the industry to create these tools for real estate investors that are leveraging some type of back-end automation tied to something like ChatGPT or one of the others, right? So there's some flaws, of course, and it's getting better every single day at a rapid pace. But where do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's really hard to say 5 or even 10 because, just like you just mentioned, things are happening so fast every day, every week in this business. Everybody's developing out at such a hyper pace. And the truth is, it's because we have a cheat. We have ChatGPT that we could ask, what code do I need to connect these things together? And it'll say, here's your code. Copy paste it. Whoa! You mean I don't have to study the programming language or hire some, high paid, programmer that knows how to do that? I can just ask. Wow. So we've got a number of developments that we've been working on. So we've only been offering this to other investors and other business owners because the use case is limitless, right? You can apply this to any business. And as a matter of fact, a lot of our clients are not in real estate, our AI clients, because we have an agency that we're helping everybody out with. And with our real estate business, right, most of it's automated at this point. So, our bots handle all of our real estate business as far as all of the repetitive stuff and everything. But then, and only when we have a potential deal, do I decide to jump in on it and close on it. Now, number one, what sets us apart with our bots and makes them so special is that we have trained them. See, right off the shelf, a bot is not really that helpful. You really have to train it and give it knowledge that is very specific to what you want. You have to give it scripts and everything. But what's happened is we train our bots with, number one, a human psychology 101 routine, right? So it understands human psychology, the thought process, subconscious, all that kind of stuff. Then we train it with a subroutine of a sales closer process. And we include in with that neuro-linguistic programming, which is the language of the brain, essentially. So you're talking to somebody's subconscious when you're using NLP. And that alone makes it a very dangerous bot because it can get in your head,
Literally.
And so, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because I set up a bot that I trained to be like me. And I cloned my voice on it. But I didn't give it limitations to focus on real estate or anything like that. I just tried to make it like me in general, wide open, right? And so I described myself to it to the T as best as I could. And then I applied my voice to it. And now I have on demand, I have the ability to talk to myself and I can talk back. So here's an example of what happened a couple of weeks ago. I normally get up in the mornings and go for a 5-mile run to just get the blood flowing and get everything going. And this one morning in particular, I wasn't feeling it. I was feeling kind of weak and tired. And I sat down just to go to work. And I felt like, well, let me just talk to myself, the bot, for a minute. And it said, well, what's going on this morning with you? And I told it, I don't feel like going for my run. I feel a little tired. And in my own voice, it told me, many people find that once they start their workout or running, that they get a burst of energy shortly after. So why don't you go tie up and lace up your shoes and get to work? And I went, what? And it worked. Brilliant. It got in my head and I was like, you're right. Let me just go tie my shoes and get to it.
Yeah. The hardest part is getting started.
Really, that's right. And so we've got this really exciting stuff that's happening. But as it pertains to real estate, we talked about psychology, NLP, a sales closer process, very specific questions that we wanted to ask. And we have it ask them in a sequence of priority objectives, right? So we have it to where first we wanted to ask this, then we wanted to ask this. And then when it gets towards the end, some of our specialties that we include in there is a 2-part question when it comes time to negotiate price. Right. So the first question is, do you have any idea of what you feel the property might be worth? And so they answer that question, and it's usually the Zillow's estimate figure that they come up with because they looked it up on Zillow and said, hey, I think it's worth this. But the second part, follow-up part of that question is, how much are you willing to sell it to me for? Right, which implies that there should be a lower figure than the first one that they gave us. Right. And so right now our bots are to that point, but we're so close to being able to roll out bots that will continue to negotiate the price and then insert the terms and price into an agreement and send it over DocuSign while the bot is on the phone with them. And once it gets signed, we can route it to the escrow company and to our Dispo bot, who starts calling our buyers and talking to them about the property we just got under contract. So this is where we're looking at, by the end of this year, I'm planning for my personal wholesaling business anyway to be 100% automated.
So are you saying that this could get rid of wholesalers? Is it going to replace wholesalers?
I don't know. The saying that we have is that AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI.
Yeah, I think I love it because it's the front edge of this. We're really just kind of scratching the surface on what's possible. And it's only limited by our imagination and willingness to figure it out and ingenuity to do the work. So you're right. There is going to be certainly an impact. We're already seeing an impact today on the off-market kind of investor space. We're seeing an impact even in the agent space as it comes to this human-to-human interaction or human-to-AI interaction. Because the interesting thing about sales and either selling a product or buying a house is there's like a truth to it. And it is a numbers game. Your client is out there somewhere. So if you can get through enough people, either in outreach or inbound, to find somebody who needs your service, then you can make money doing that thing. And the limiting factor is the ability to get through enough people. So we think of it like a big funnel. I have, say, the whole state of Florida, and in the whole state of Florida, 5% of those transactions are going to go off market. So I have to go take, the 450,000 transactions that happen every year and find the 5% that are selling off market and do deals in that fraction of the space. So if I can get through more of those faster, leveraging AI, which reduces my human capital, my overhead in my business, I have a really, really big opportunity in front of me.
Yeah, because it's, in one word, it's scalable and it's predictable.
It's scalable.
Right?
It's scalable. Yeah. It shows up on time.
It doesn't call in sick ever. Doesn't need to take bathroom breaks, right? Doesn't need a lunch break.
Puts notes
24 hours a day. That's right. Automatically is accurate in updating everything. And if 100 people called in all at once, it's going to answer every single one of those calls. Show me a human that can do that.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. Let's say, you're on the phone, but you don't speak English. So you just start rattling off in Spanish. Hablas español? And the bot will switch to Spanish and talk to you in Spanish, or any of the other 47 languages that it currently has the ability to speak. So show me a human that can speak 47 languages, and can answer 100 calls at the same time, and can respond to 100 texts at the same time. Woo!
That's incredible. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, Gerald, you've got such a good story, man. You've got so much depth and experience, and you've been through the ringer, and you've came up a couple times, I'm sure. So this is extremely valuable, and it obviously comes from a place of actually doing the thing. So I appreciate that, man. If people wanted to find out more about what you're doing in the AI space, or more about what you're doing in the real estate space, where could they find you?
Yeah, so we've got, I'm on the social media stuff, all the platforms as far as real estate is concerned. You can find me there, Gerald Hennessy. But our flagship product, our bot, is dealmakerbot.com. And if you want to also find out more about some of the enterprise solutions or our company, that's techtasia.com.
Techtasia, so TECHTESIA?
TASIA, yeah, Techtasia. Kind of like Fantasia, but with tech.
Okay. Yeah, Techtasia. Got it. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for spending time with me today. I'm glad. I know we've been trying to catch up for a little while now. I'm glad we got to come on and catch up. Obviously, anytime you can get that shared experience of real estate, which is a cyclic monster that is always a moving target, it's a lot of fun. But to hear folks who've gone through the cycles is always valuable. So thank you, man. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming on today. And if people want to check you out, make sure you go to the dealmakerbot.com, or find Gerald Hennessy on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. He's on there. Thanks, man.
Yep. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to following up with you soon.